Hi. Hello. Hi. 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 Hello, everybody. My name is Artem, and I am beginning my broadcast this Saturday at 11 a.m. Uh, oh, sorry about that. So I apologize for the lack of broadcasts the previous week. So I decided to skip that one, and this one is on Saturday, unfortunately, rather than on Sunday because I'm busy on Sunday. But going forward, I'm planning to, you know, resume doing those every Sunday on 11 a.m. So hopefully some people will come. Right now we have, like, 4 watchers and nobody in the guest room in the stream yet, but I will just address some questions from my online chat community, or wait for some questions to appear in the comments section. But I highly encourage you, if you want to speak, if you want to ask questions, or share something, or just engage, please, down below in the description of this video, there's a StreamYard link which you can follow and be a part of this discussion. So, well, thank you everybody who's watching or who will be watching later in recording. More people coming. Now we have 5 watchers. Okay, so I will, right now, I will just read, I don't have any specific topic that I want to discuss today. By the way, I also wanted to mention that if you do want me to speak on a specific topic, then please just write your suggestions in the comment section, or, send them privately to me in Discord or something like that, and I will see if I can speak on a specific topic. But for the last several meetings, I have just been responding to questions that come in real time. So okay. Hi, we actually have a first visitor. So hi Shay. Let me add you to the stream. Hi Shay, how's it going?
How are you today?
Oh, sorry, I was actually on mute.
Oh.
Yes. Hi. Yes. Hi Shay. Yes. Now I can hear you.
Hi. I have a question for you today, and it is about feeling like an imposter.
Oh. Okay.
I've been feeling it a lot of different ways recently. Sometimes it feels like I don't belong where I actually am, like I don't believe in myself. But other times it feels like I'm faking things all the time to appear a certain way, and I am starting to see through it, and it's very painful. And
that's great.
There seems to be this kind of, like, sometimes it feels like I'm afraid of other people, and other times it feels like I'm angry, and it feels kind of like the same thing going back and forth. But like most recently, I've just been totally anxious and feeling like I'm operating on 2 different levels. Like, one is what I feel like I'm supposed to be doing, which I've been doing, and kind of trying to anticipate what I think everybody else wants from me. And the other one is, like, occasionally dropping down into this sense of, I'm not very pleased with this, but it feels very chaotic. And I was just wondering if you had some perspective on that. Like how to be with that, or if you had that in your own experience at some point.
Can you give me some more details? So you said that sometimes it feels like 2 things going on at the same time, like, or you switch between the 2.
Like I'm living in 2 separate realities at the same time, or my consciousness is kind of split between 2 different kind of aspects of myself at the same time. So here's an example.
Okay.
I had a meeting with my boss, and I was 15 minutes late for it because the alarm that I set didn't go off. And when I realized it, I got on the Zoom call with my boss, and then my child was crying, and I didn't have a nurse at the time. So I was rushing, trying to take care of him and talk to her at the same time. And I was just feeling really horrible. Like I had somehow not lived up to this kind of image of myself that I was trying to put out. But then afterwards I was like, my God, I'm doing everything I can. I just pulled an all-nighter with my kids because I didn't have nursing. I'm exhausted. And yet I can't seem to give myself any compassion. And instead, all I'm doing is focusing on what I think other people are expecting of me. like that even matters. Like she couldn't have any empathy or compassion for me whatsoever, because somehow I had to live up to this ideal self that wasn't even physically possible, that nobody was expecting from me. And it was very frustrating. So that's, I guess, an example of something that I have experienced recently.
Okay. Yes, I understand better now. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for sharing this. By the way, that's it's a wonderful question, and it's a very common experience. And yes, I had something quite similar, and I think everybody has on the spiritual path. So I think that what's going on is that you are simply getting exposed, through the this magic of this process, through becoming more and more self-aware, and through paying more and more attention, and through learning to be with yourself, not to run away from it. So you're getting more and more exposed into how you have internalized the expectations that other people have on you, and the our society's preferred way of dealing with this expectation, which is emotional violence and blame and accusations. So it's not as much. So the reason, the fear from other people is actually not the fear from other people, but it is the fear of going into this process deeper, of seeing more, of seeing more of your reactions, of seeing more of how painful they are, and how self-defeating they are, and how debilitating they are sometimes, and the emotional pain, and to so you're kind of, it's not that other people specifically bring you this pain, they trigger this long standing childhood pain in you, right? So you observe the tendency of your very own mind to speak harshly to you,
Yeah.
to yourself, right? And to blame yourself, to place expectations for, and not to give yourself any slack, you see. So how other people treat you isn't that relevant if this happens kind of after, like, so you speak to somebody or something happened, and now you're hearing this dialogue and you experiencing these emotions, right? So like, maybe somebody told you something, but why would we be hearing all this endless kind of self accusations and self analysis days from this moment, right? Hours from this moment, weeks from this moment, you see. So something, other people kind of they are wonderful in how efficiently at some stage of the practice they uh, have the ability to trigger this deep-seated insecurities in us.
Yeah. I'm also having the experience where it gets triggered, but then they don't act in a way that's predictable, because they're not treating me with cruelty. Like there is no agreement there to kind of try to reinforce that. And then when they don't do that, or they say, what are you doing? Are you playing some kind of a role? Are you, like, why are you doing this to yourself? Then I get really upset, and I get even more scared, because I feel like I'm just in total chaos.
Yes. Sometimes, yes, it can get very emotionally painful to get exposed to how we treat ourselves.
Yeah, I'm obviously doing it to myself, because, there's plenty of people in my life that are not doing that to me. It's just that I've always kind of assumed that they are.
Yeah, for sure. We do this all the time. Yes, please continue. I apologize.
No, that's okay. I mean, it's even to the extent that, like, I can be out in nature, like sitting meditating, and a bird will come, and I'll feel judged by the bird. you know, well, this bird's attacking my head because it thinks that I'm special, or this bird is mad at me for, like, getting in its way, or and I feel like so self-conscious about it, and it just is like, come on, it's stupid, but it's but that's how it feels.
But yeah, exactly. It's stupid. It's irrational, right? So at some point, right? But that's how it feels, and you can't do much about it, right? So
No, not really.
Yes, it's a very kind of paradoxical process, and you notice you noticed very aptly, right, that even with the bird, right? So sometimes people really judge you, and sometimes people are really emotionally aggressive towards you, and sometimes they don't give you any slack. And if you are, and if this has been a part of your wounds, if this has been a part of your conditioning, then it of course can trigger a very difficult emotional reaction in you. But sometimes they aren't even trying to do that. I mean, some like, for example, as my dream was unfolding, I was hurt so frequently and triggered so frequently by people that actually didn't mean to trigger me. They were just speaking about some aspect of my experience, some aspect of myself, some aspect of my psyche that I was in denial of, or I was insecure about, or I didn't want to admit to myself. And those triggers, they are actually very helpful. You see, just like this bird. I mean, believe it or not, the bird was also giving you grace, right? Of course, everything is. So you, the mind starts unraveling, starts spinning the stories. Sometimes somebody would tell you something, and the old familiar story about how we are, for example, such losers, or how we can't do that, or we can't do that, or whatever it is, right? Whatever it is that we think which is wrong with us.
Right, like nobody's allowed to know that I'm a dysfunctional person and that I have all this stuff going on.
Right. Yes, exactly. But there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. So when the stories come, they aren't even true, actually.
No.
But what is undeniable whenever the stories come is the other aspect of experience, which you have also mentioned multiple times. For example, like emotional pain, or I feel disoriented, or I feel so confused, or something else. So whatever it is, right? So try to take your attention from the words in your mind. Don't try to suppress them, right? So kind of the standard advice: let the mind blabber. Don't worry about it. Let it talk. Don't worry about it. But focus the attention on whatever it is that you feel, right? Is this anger? Is this tears? Is this sadness? What is it? And let yourself feel it through. And the same, by the way, applies to things which we describe kind of more vaguely, but it doesn't make it any less real. Like I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling confusion. I'm confused. I don't understand what's going on, and that's okay. For right now, I don't understand what's going on. Let's just sit. We don't have to do anything about it. I don't understand what's going on with me, for example, or I feel disoriented, psychologically. So, or I don't know what to think of this person. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. But this underlying pain is asking to be felt through, and it is also what is covering a deeper and deeper insight about how we turned out this way, and all the trauma and wounds that we are carrying with us, which are getting triggered.
Yeah. And that ultimately, I'm really just clinging to judgment.
Well, sure, but like saying I'm clinging to judgment is judgment.
Right. Yes, true.
Right. Well, sure. I mean, of course, like we all cling to judgment. So, I mean, of course, like if you weren't clinging to judgment, right, then you wouldn't have all this difficulty.
Yeah, it's just so strange to see that in some weird way, I want other people to judge me negatively because it feels safe. I want them to
You mean it feels
have this
familiar?
kind of back and forth agreement where they treat me this way and I treat them that way, so
Because
that
it's familiar, right?
the
That's how it
roles can
works.
be familiar,
Mm-hmm.
and that there are a lot of people willing to do that, even if it means treating you badly.
Of course,
But I
yeah.
have people in my life that aren't willing to do that, and it's just really kind of messing with me a lot.
But that's good. That's actually how we get into this dysfunctional relationships with each other. You see, because kind of you mistreat me, but I feel safe and familiar because that's been my experience since childhood, and that's also how I view myself as deserving to be mistreated, for example, right? And we get into this dysfunction, and there's almost as if there's, I mean, it's sometimes it's difficult to speak about it, how ugly it is, but it's true nevertheless, and it was also true in my experience. It's almost as if there's some underlying wicked contract of
Yeah,
you
it
know,
totally is. I mean,
yes, like
call
a,
it that if
you
you
treat
want.
me like shit,
Right.
and I will cling to you, and I will kind of pretend that I need you, and you fulfill some void in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it happens all the time. It happens all the time, all the time. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Yes, and 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 sometimes when people don't do that, so I was like, oh, it was expected to hurt. What's going on?
Yeah. Like, who are you now?
Yeah,
Especially if you have a relationship that was like that and then it's transforming into something else where the person's kind to you and you're just like, who are you? I don't know you anymore. Do you even care about me anymore? And really they're
right.
just not sadistic anymore.
And you are also transforming, right? So
Yeah,
your
yeah.
reactions are
Well,
transforming because what actually what gives the biggest encouragement to the sadistic parts of us, to the parts of us which uh, take pleasure in inflicting emotional pain upon other people, is seeing the pain. And yes, if we are very self-aware, then maybe later we will experience guilt and we will understand that we. But if we aren't self-aware yet, if we adopted this aggressive behavior as a coping mechanism for our own trauma, then we actually feel like we achieve something when the other person is, for example, ashamed. You see, like for example, like parents that are berating their children, right? So if they're self-aware, sometimes they feel guilt afterwards. But if they're not, they may feel like they're doing a very good job raising the kids, for example. You see. So yeah, so sometimes the dynamics of your relationship with the other person can change, not because they changed, but because you have.
mhm.
Or for example, you don't react to that visibly as much, or you react to that differently,
Yeah.
and they start behaving differently. You see, but you can't try to. But the reason you reacted to it differently is secondary. The primary reason is that you aren't as avoiding of your negative, difficult emotional experience, and it's not as painful. You're more accepting of it. Therefore, it is easier for you to not kind of have this knee-jerk reaction. Uh, so it's always a consequence of processing through and deeper acceptance of your experience. It's if you try to behave a certain way, or if you try to behave as if you're unreactive, uh,
Yeah, it doesn't work.
it doesn't work. You're not fooling anybody. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for this question, and we also have Melly, so I'm going to add him now. Thank you, Shay. Hi, Melly. How's it going?
Hello,
Hi.
I'm good. Uh, feeling a lot of things at the same time. I mean, dealing with a lot of flashbacks at the same time. Most of the day, I'm dealing with a lot of things at the same time. But yeah, I don't really have any question.
Okay.
I just wanted to listen.
Okay. No
Mm,
worries. Yes, I will. Yeah. If you have some questions, and would you like me to bring you up again, then just send a comment, and I will do that. I just wanted to quickly mention that having uh, uh, different emotions, or sometimes contradictory emotions at the same time, is quite normal, and it can get very also disorienting and difficult, but it's absolutely normal. Like feeling a lot of things at the same time,
mm,
absolutely normal. So
yeah. I've
okay.
I've gotten to get used to that somewhat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Yeah, that's right, my friend. Okay. Okay, so let's see if we have any. Oh, so we have 15 people watching us right now. Thank you very much for joining me today for this conversation. So now we have some comments. Let's see. Alejandro Cat says, "Hey Shay and Artem, hey Alejandro, how's it going? It's been a very long time, I think, since we spoke. I'm glad to hear from you." Logan says, "Hey Artem, what's the connection between emotions and self-image?" Oh, that's such a great question. Why when you go through your emotions does the mental identity also go? Okay, that's a great question. So so the mental identity, the ego, the persona, the self-image, the unreal version of ourselves, which we adopt to be ourselves, is basically you could also say that it's a coping mechanism for trauma. So it is basically it is the ways that we devise the behavioral ways that we devise how we will approach, communicate, and relate to other people so that we don't get hurt. That's what it is, actually. So it doesn't have much to do with what we really desire, with what we really want, with how we want to live our life. This also goes, by the way. So kind of it's a combination of your authentic self and the false self. So that's why I also say like there's no such thing as a life which is incomplete. Even if you live your whole life as an ego and never make any realizations or anything like that, your life will still be complete and it will still be wonderful, and you will still experience all of the reality in it. But the deeper you associate with this persona, with this identity, and the stronger it is, and the more mental energy it takes to support it, the extreme side of which is clinical narcissism. So it takes a lot of mental energy to support their identity. It is therefore very fragile, and it's easy to insult a narcissist. So the more energy you exert in supporting this identity, the more energy you actually exert in protecting yourself from suffering. And the deeper the suffering is when it happens. That's why it's, the term narcissistic rage is basically about it, right? So narcissist can, a clinical narcissist can go into a very angry rage over, let's say, a saying or a comment that most people would not. I mean, of course, you can say how ugly it is, but you can also say how painful it is for him or for her, for them, right? Because no one likes to be very angry, and if you're in a rage, it's a very difficult experience, actually. No one likes that. So it is. So this persona is what we want to believe. We want to believe that that's how we are, because we believe on some level that this is the better way to be, and if we are this way, then we are better people. People will treat us better. We won't get hurt and stuff like that. So but the reality is that that's actually not true. There are a lot of people that will hurt us regardless. That's oftentimes how we think we are is not actually. We're not sufficiently self-aware. So we're not this way, and most of the times actually. And so when people tell us, just like they would tell a narcissist, or when the reality in one way or another, it can be people, something that happened to you, your relationship breaking up, whatever it is. So when reality tells us that we aren't exactly how we think we are, then it's very painful. So but that means that by working through this pain, and accepting that working through the pain of disillusionment in ourselves, actually, uh, uh, in is what allows us to accept the reality. So we accept the reality of how we really are. We can change it. We accept the reality that we don't actually control our experience. We can only control our behavior. We accept the reality that we don't control our suffering. We accept the reality that we don't control other people. So all of those things are quite difficult and emotional to accept. Like, for example, let's have an example. Somebody angered you, right? And you have two options, right? If I say, well, just sit with your anger, right? So what does it mean? It means that you don't retaliate immediately. You don't enter in some heating argument. You don't place the blame on your anger on another person. Maybe you will do it mentally, but at least you don't do it with your behavior. You see? So and you take responsibility for your anger. You say, this anger is mine. No one will help me feel it. No one will help me avoid it. It's mine. There's not a person in the world that will help me to deal with this anger. And so you learn to be okay with whatever it is you're feeling. And the more you learn to be okay with whatever it is you're feeling, the less you cling to a specific form of behavior, which is the proper one. And the less judgmental you are of other people simply because they hurt you less. So that's one way to look at this connection. I think I'm sure that there are other ways. I just sort of kind of improvised a little bit and I responded the best way I could. But it's a wonderful question, and thank you for asking it. Okay, so CR Bora, hi my friend, how's it going? It's also been some time since we spoke. So CR says, why do we dream at night? And why am I having recurring nightmares of being in an exam hall with no clue of how the year went by, though college ended some 8 years back? Yeah, that's also a great question. And also, I had a lot of experience with that. I had a lot of recurring dreams. Like, for example, I've been to the army, so I really hated it. And I had a lot of recurring dreams of how, for example, I was drafted the second time and I had to explain to everybody that I've already been there. Please let me go. Like, I'm 40 years old. What are you talking about? So I had a lot of dreams like that. Just in general. So it's very common. So the dreaming basically is imagining. So dreaming is, as Osho said once, dreaming is our unlived life. So dreaming is imagining different situations based on the past and working through your emotional response to all of those situations. So at least after awakening, that has been my experience. So before awakening, I mean, probably I would say, well, actually before and after, I would also agree that dreaming is a window into your unconscious or subconscious. It's a window into the suppressed issues, the suppressed emotional issues, the suppressed the remaining self-limitations, the remaining traumas of the past. Like, for example, the conflict let me think if I can give a good example. Yeah, nothing really comes to mind right now. I wanted to give you an example of my own experience as I worked through a specific mental limitation of mine. The dreams that tended to make this limitation a central issue, which is also why they would be quite uncomfortable, disappeared. So, and all of our limitations are coming from a fear of future uncomfortable experience. So like, for example, you can disidentify with the ego and identify with awareness and be in this kind of awakened state of consciousness. And during the day, you may not experience a lot of difficulty living your life. But it depends on your life circumstance. You may even feel that, nothing triggers you pretty much. But during dreaming, your mind still creates the scenarios for yourself which will trigger you in a continuing process of integrating, of kind of becoming whole, of the continuing process of dissolving the conditioning of the mind, the continuous process of getting to know yourself better, getting to know your wounds better, and also the continuing process of working through the fear of life. So fears come up in dreams. There could be lots of other things in dreams. There could be deaths or suicides in dreams. Like for example, I don't think that I ever committed suicide in a dream, but I certainly died many times in dreams. And usually when you die in a dream, you just wake up. It's just a scenario to work through a part of your fear, to kind of make you, to help you learn to be comfortable with fear. So it's entirely natural, what you're going through. Conflicts, for example, between what the society wants from you and what you really want. Also, the unresolved conflict. So if you are, for example, if you're still on a kind of deep psychological level, if you're still bound by the expectations from other people in some respects, in some ways, then you may not notice it during the daytime, but during dreams, there may be more intense scenarios where this is kind of obvious, and you struggle with the conflict between an expectation and your own desire, kind of your own will, which is like your own desire not to fulfill it, or your kind of, the conflicts between the expectation from other people and what you really want to do. So it seems like maybe that's something that you're experiencing. I certainly have experienced a lot of that in dreams. And so what you're saying sounds very familiar to me. I actually had exact same dreams pretty much about college, for example, not just the army, but the college, because I really didn't want to actually finish college. I didn't see any sense in it, but I kind of had to, so that I wouldn't go to the army. I still went, and so that I could move to the US, which I really wanted to do, and so I kind of disliked it. And sometimes I also would get dreams like, oh, there's an exam, I need to do this exam, and kind of things like that. So most of us live our lives in decades of not doing what we want and not living our lives how we want, but doing what the society expects from us. So the spiritual process is basically moving away from that into your own interpretations, into your own I don't even know how to finish the sentence, but I hope that it makes sense. So I hope that you understood what I was trying to say. So yes, I mean, don't try to analyze it. It will happen on its own. Like everything will happen on its own. Uh, for example, Osho once recommended a technique to induce lucid dreaming, like trying to remember that. Just set the intention every time that you go to bed that you will remember that it's a dream. I tried that; it didn't work for me very much, but I naturally, gradually started to remember more and more that it's a dream, and gradually I started dreaming more and more lucidly. Started to get less and less caught up in dreams. This issues like the army exams, they start to appear less and less in dreams as I worked through the emotional materials that underlies it, and the dreams became more pleasant, or just less persistent, less vivid. Sometimes I would just get thought dreams. Sometimes I would get no dreaming at all. So dreams are actually a very important part of this process. And my advice would be, actually, now I wouldn't recommend anybody to do what Osho recommended. So I would just say, don't try to change your dreaming experience at all. And it's totally normal to have very fearful dreams and sleep paralysis, and also as you become conscious during dreams, it manifests in dreams as dying. It can manifest in dreams as a lot of very unpleasant stuff and fear and things like that. And that's great, actually. That's very good. So dreaming is a continuation of the unfolding. Dreaming is the continuation. So because first, as you wake up, so in the separate state, we pretty much dream 24/7. I mean, except the deep sleep, right? Obviously, but the dreaming activity, there's also activity in the mind during the daytime, and during the nighttime, as there is no reality, so there's no input, there's no information from the senses. The mind is much freer to dream wildly, right? So during the daytime, you're still somehow restricted, right? So you can imagine all sorts of different scenarios. You can go into the past, you can go to the future, but you are restricted. Like, I mean, a tree is a tree. You look into it, you look at it, but during the nighttime, you close your eyes, and pretty much there's no restriction at all. So you can create any scenery, and the mind is wonderful at doing that. And for example, as you on a psychedelic trips, if you take a very large dose, I mean, as I did a couple of times, this dreaming activity of the mind starts blending with reality, and you can get into all sorts of very crazy experiences where the actual reality with the eyes open will start to morph. Which, by the way, does that mean that it started to behave differently? I mean, as you're tripping the people around, I mean, the body, your body will still kind of, the people around you, you will look kind of crazy, but your body will still follow the same laws, and it's just that in your mind you will see the reality very differently. So our mind are great dreamers, and there are even those very bizarre states of mind where the dreaming and the actual reality are intermixed into some very bizarre and weird morph. But as you close your eyes and you start to actually sleep, then the mind is free to create all sorts of fantastic sceneries, and it's actually it's okay. It's good. You are doing that to continue the processing of your old trauma and processing of your conditioning after the awakening, if your awakening was authentic. And for most people report that after the awakening, the dreams become more vivid, more emotional for some time, right? And that was my experience too. Right now, they're less vivid and less emotional. And as I said, I mean, sometimes they're just thoughts and no imagery at all. But I had a long period where they become more vivid, more emotional, and it was very clear to me what was going on there. So it's all good. Dag says, "Hi Artem." Hi Dag. I still have a long way ahead Okay, but I'm at the point where almost all of my big questions have disappeared or burned themselves away. Awesome. Yes. So that's what it is. It is burning away of the deep questions. It became a problem for me, because for some reason I couldn't stand in my inauthenticity anymore. But ultimately, the separated state is also part of the unitary movement, isn't it? I'm not quite sure what you mean by unitary movement. So if you say, but ultimately the dream state is a part of reality, isn't it? Yes. But so ultimately the separated state is not a different state. So it's not a complete unreality, right? It is a part of reality, right? So it is so the dreaming happens in reality. So the seeking actually also happens in reality. So even like if we say that, like at the beginning, right? So the big divide between duality and non-duality, right? Consciousness is true, ego is not true, right? Consciousness is real, ego is not real. So even so even like in this, even in this realization, the illusion of the reality of the ego was real. So the illusion that you are an ego was also part of reality. So, but if you mean to say that the separated state is somehow an important instrument in achieving some sort of unitary consciousness or some sort of like collective enlightenment of the world, then actually no. It's a very common view that it's an important part of our evolution and our development. No, the enlightenment is basically just adulthood. So we are traumatized children that never grow up. That's what we are. So the separated state can also be described as a very, very long childhood that so we are basically animals that are still deeply plagued by issues of attachment. That's what we are, because those issues are unresolved. Because the because we deny each other our authenticity. So the issue in childhood. So the issues of attachment continue to be a central issue of our psychological lives, whether we accept it or not, whether we admit it or not. So I think that a much more natural state of things is when those issues are resolved somewhere, just like they are resolved in the animal kingdom, as the child grows up. So we're basically just children that never grow up, and we don't grow up because we have a lot of suppressed suffering, suppressed wounds. We don't want to look into that, so we treat each other callously, and our whole culture is emerged out of that, and our whole culture reinforces it and kind of keeps us enslaved in this way. So I would not say that there's some master plan that, but from a personal perspective, it feels this way oftentimes. Absolutely. So from a personal perspective, like for example, I can tell you that obviously to be who I am right now, I had to go through everything that I went through, and of course, the egoic identification, all the suffering was an important part of my development and stuff like that. But I'm a spiritual teacher, right? So I like that. Not everybody must be a spiritual teacher. Enlightenment isn't an ascension into being a spiritual teacher. That's one of the biggest misconceptions and one of the most stupid things. So that enlightenment is an ascension, like you become a Buddha, like a Jesus, and then you start teaching everybody. No, not at all. Because if that was true, then we then basically having an enlightened world wouldn't be possible, right? Because so who would they teach? And if that would be and if that would be impossible, then what am I doing exactly, and why? So no. Um, you can lead a very beautiful, creative, wonderful life without knowing anything about spirituality, without getting lost as deep as I have, without having all this insight about the real causes of the human condition, about why we are so miserable, without having any of those. And you can lead a very great life, without the need to go through all of that. So it's quite personal. So on a personal level, yes, everything that happens to you is a part of reality, and it's a part of the unitary movement. Like Osho said once also beautifully, that he said that we move all our lives, we're moving towards Buddhahood. So he said our whole life moves us towards Buddhahood. So it's right. It's a beautiful saying. So everything that happens to you moves you towards the union, right? But to say that a separate state is needed, I think on the personal level, maybe, because that's your reality, but is needed for everybody. No. I actually think that hopefully, I hope that thousands of years from now, when I will be long dead, we will achieve a society where we properly grow up, and we won't have as much madness, as much mental illnesses, as much violence, as much hatred, as much conflict as we have right now in the world. We have everything for it. It's just that it is very difficult. We've been doing it for so long, and there is so much misinformation, lies, misconceptions. And the culture is so sick that it will take a very long time to heal. And it starts at the roots. It starts with people like you and me. It starts with each individual, and then it spreads through culture. So yeah, so I don't know if I really answered it or not. I'm sorry if it felt like I tend to do that. So okay, Logan said another question, if I can. Is relaxing and accepting similar to not caring? I have gone in and out of a state of non-duality, and oftentimes it feels like I care a lot less. Yes, very much so. Of course. And yes, it sounds sinister, and there are like all of the, you see, what we call caring is oftentimes pain, because we are so kind of in the separated state. We're so self-absorbed in our suffering, and we so want to relieve it, that we are focused on internal experience. So when we say I care, we mean I feel something, and usually it's pain. When we say I care, we mean if the thing, we mean the outcome is very important for us. That if the outcome is going to be different, then we're going to hurt, right? That's what we usually mean. But that's not what caring is. Caring is action. Caring is watering the flower, is not being hurt by the flower rotting, for example, right? I mean, both can be true. You can be hurt by seeing the flower wither. I don't know the right pronunciation, and water it, and both are caring, right? but only the second one has any real life consequence. You see? So it's absolutely normal to feel like you stop caring, right? And sometimes as we go through this process, what in the separate states, what we call caring is actually oftentimes our sickness. It's our clinging and our desire to not hurt. And sometimes it's our desire to be seen as caring. So, but whatever it is, the caring in the separate state oftentimes is not authentic. So oftentimes what happens as you go through this is first you kind of plunged into this. It's like, I don't care about anything anymore. I haven't cared about myself my whole life. I don't care about other people at all now. I mean, come on. Like, I lived my whole life not actually giving a shit about myself, you know? And you go through a period of learning to love yourself and learning to not care about what other people think of you. But once you are sufficiently mature in that, then you also understand the role of suffering, the conditions that we recreate from generation to generation to recreate suffering, the tragedy of suffering. And as you naturally begin to suffer less and less, and as you grow in your own self-love, and as you suffer less, but the people around you still suffer, then the caring naturally, the caring as action naturally becomes a part of you, becomes a part of your behavior, right? So don't worry about feeling as if you stop caring. You see, recognize that, oh, you must be caring, you know, is also part of the societal message, is also part of your ego, like saying, oh, you should be this way. You see, but something's wrong. Oh, it's bad to be uncaring. It's bad. You should be caring. You see. So it's another part of it. Okay, and then you say, I love the relaxing part of not caring, but I also fear it. Yeah, exactly. Yes. And it can be enjoyable to care about things. Well, if it's enjoyable to care about things, then care about things, right? So it's not like through this process, you're not going to lose any joy, right? If something is enjoyable for you, then it is enjoyable for you. But the fear of not caring is also the fear of admitting that a big part of what you call caring right now is the image, the image of a good, caring person that society also instilled in us. You see, because if you're authentically caring, then kind of you don't struggle with these questions. Your behavior is caring, and you are not suffering about this inside. So don't worry about this particular pickle. I completely understand it. The authentic love and caring is a continuation of your love for yourself. You know, like you can share your love, you can share your caring. You cannot make yourself love somebody or make yourself care somebody. So when you authentically care for somebody, the impulse arises in you, and you do it regardless of what other people think of you. So don't worry about it. I understand the question. Don't worry about it. Mina says, is from your experience the process of triggering and acting out suppressed emotions more effective than mainstream meditation? Surrender to the present moment, being a witness. Great question also. Well, first of all, small corrections, not acting out. So I don't think that the acting out your suppressed emotions can be helpful. Yes. So I'm all for it when both sides are consensual. So I'm all for kind of, if it's a part of a consensual spiritual process, having difficult conversation, honest conversation, insulting each other, screaming at each other, if kind of having any sorts of interactions for as long as they're not physically violent and they're consensual, right? If you feel like it's helping, if you feel like, and of course, not negative, like all sorts of the interactions that bring deeper intimacy. But it's a big misconception that you build intimacy but complementing each other. That's not intimacy. Intimacy is not constant complementing each other. Intimacy is being truthful to each other. So so it's not about acting out. Feeling through, yes, and acting out can happen, or that's not really important. Sometimes we act out not to feel through. You see, that's important. So if you're using the triggering and acting out as a part of your spiritual process, don't forget to keep the attention on yourself. So even as you, let's say, triggered and angry, and you like exchanging some mean text or whatever, or speaking to a person and having a difficult conversation, pay attention to what's happening inside of you. Pay attention to the emotions that you're experiencing. That's the most important part, not the acting out. And now, is it more effective than the mainstream meditation? No, actually, it's not. I would never recommend it as a sole form of practice. It's not a sole form of practice. It is, yes, like generally speaking, being triggered, processing your emotions is good, yes, but whether it leads to deep sustainable insight by itself, I'm not sure, because the practice of meditation is a very fundamental practice. If you think about what meditation is, right? Meditation is simply your ability to be with yourself without any distraction and be okay with it. You see? So if you need somebody to constantly, for example, play this trigger game, or to constantly be engaged in some sort of emotional back and forth, then if you haven't yet developed your witnessing ability, if you haven't yet developed the internal focus, which allows you to kind of accept, feel through, and let go, and keep the understanding that it is just an experience, just a sensation. It doesn't necessarily. It's not informative, actually, even about what's true and what's not true. I'm speaking about informative. I'm speaking about emotional pain. So if you haven't yet arrived at this place, then constant triggering and exchanging can just by itself be a form of avoidance, and you can just keep doing this for years and years and years if you're still unable to simply be with yourself for, let's say, 2 or 3 hours without jumping up and really needing to distract yourself. So including those triggering exchanges, by the way. So I would not say that this is a form of practice in itself. Can it possibly bring you closer? Yes. I mean, everything that you do in life, which allows you, which is in the direction of deeper acceptance of your sensate immediate experience, is wonderful, and it's going to bring you closer to self-realization. It's going to bring you closer to awakening, for sure. But after that happens, I haven't seen a single case where meditation would not become a form of practice. Sometimes it just happens effortlessly. I mean, sometimes people just become very sleepy, and sometimes people just want to lie down, but it's a very intimate process also, right? So kind of the deepest truths about yourself you can only realize alone, right? Even those triggers are okay. So you go through the triggers, but you process them somewhat later, right? So I mean, really process them. Because when does that happen? Like, let's say you have a very triggering conversation with somebody, and it's very difficult, and then a year from now you have kind of very similar conversation. It's like piece of cake, you're not triggered at all. So when did that happen? Did that happen like the very first time you had it? No, the time it takes time. So it rises again and again, and it arises in meditation, it arises in dreams. It's sort of you are the deeper you accept all the different parts of yourself, including the very unpleasant parts, the less you are triggered, and it's a process. Meditation is fundamental because meditation is not even a practice. It's not even a practice. It's just not doing anything, So if it's difficult, well, it can be one of the most fundamental, biggest triggers. So I hope it answers this question. Trevor says, how you relate to others emotionally. I don't. I mean, I relate to others physically, meaning that I like touching others. I like spending time with others. I get sad when others get hurt. I want others to be healthy. I want others to be flourishing. I want others to suffer less. But I don't really relate emotionally to other people's emotional needs. That's what I mean, right? So are you kind of a psychopath? Well, if that makes me a psychopath, then yes. I mean, it's a matter of a definition of the word. So if you, generally speaking, not all psychopaths are antisocial psychopaths, and generally speaking, psychopaths would probably be most of them would probably be the opposite from me. Like they would be most of the psychopaths and sociopaths. They are kind of the other side of this. So in my understanding, they are very deeply and severely emotionally suppressed. So they kind of cut themselves off from their emotions, which is also, in a way, what we do in the separated state. We cut ourselves off from our emotions. That's why after awakening, so many people report, and it was my experience, that like there's an emotional flood. There's so much suppression in us usually. So it's kind of the opposite. So it's like most dreaming people are psychopaths. Most sleeping people are psychopaths. That's why kind of why look at the world. Like, why aren't everybody crying? Just look at what we do to each other. Isn't that psychopathy? I mean, it's just word games at this point. So, are enlightened beings psychopaths in the way nobody can make them emotionally anymore? Nobody can shake them emotionally anymore at all. Yes. So in this way, they kind of are. Yes. And you also said we are inherently good. I believe so. Yes. So all people who do not feel any wrongness. So all people who. Okay, hold on. So do all people who do not feel any wrongness if they kill other people are deluded? Oh, for sure. Like people who do not feel any wrongness, any guilt when they kill other people are extremely deluded, unless they do that in self-defense. But actually, again, I mean, even if you do it in self-defense in the separate state, if it's not a very like, if you're not shaken emotionally after that, then you're extremely deluded. But most people would be, actually. So those who can kill and hurt and maim and bring pain without like feeling bad about it, without they are more deluded than others. They are much more separated from reality than others, and they need an explanation and justification for that. And it's usually it's the greater good, some ideology. Like, it all comes from society. You really need to justify those actions. And I mean, you can like just think about war, for example. So if you kill somebody because you wanted to rob them, for example, then you're a criminal. But if you kill somebody because there is your government and their government, and they have some sort of dispute, and they have, one government decided to send many people to kill other people. And if you participate in that madness and you kill many people, then you're a hero. So there's a lot of make believe that goes into justifying this thinking. And if you aren't separated from reality to an insane degree, that it's very difficult to justify it to oneself. And that's why, a lot of veterans, like if any veterans are listening to me, guys, I feel for you. It's very difficult. So that's why they don't feel oftentimes like heroes. And that's why they could be very deeply traumatized by their war experience. So yes, I mean, of course, if you harm other people and you don't feel anything about it, then you are quite separated from reality. Yes, and it's probably would be very difficult for you to meditate. That would be my guess. You probably wouldn't be able to, like. But I don't know. Like, I could be wrong. Okay, Alex says, I am exhausted and dead. I'm exhausted and dread work. From dread work? And dread. Yeah, dread. Yeah, dread is a verb. Yeah, I'm exhausted and I dread work. I don't want to work anymore. Yeah, I get it. Don't then if you don't want to work anymore. It's just a question of survival. I mean, you really have to work. It's just a matter of where you will find food to eat and where you will find shelter. It's very hard to deal with because I have to make money to pay bills and live on my own. Yeah, that's the issue usually. But you can go to a monastery too if you wish. But I'm so tired and I don't have enough energy to put toward all of the stuff that is coming up. I get it, man. I mean, I was super lucky. I mean, I don't even know if knowing my ego, I don't even know that I would be able to go through this process if I didn't have a lot of savings, because I would be constantly anxious about money and about fears and things like that. So for me, kind of, it all was perfect that I ended up at Google. I had a stock grant. I have a specific amount of savings, which allowed me as I entered this process for like 2 or 3 years. I didn't work, and I would absolutely not be able to work, I think, in the first year or two. I once I said I have no idea how people going through this process while they work, it can be so difficult. So I feel for you, my friend. I also, that's also why I wish that there were more people and more nonprofit organizations and more centers, not just like a retreat center when you can go and sing kumbaya, but as a sort of place where you can live for some time. And unfortunately, we don't have that in our modern society. So there's very little support for somebody who says, I'm too overwhelmed to work, especially in the United States. So yes, I totally get it. But yep. I feel like I want to completely withdraw and prioritize my practice. Yeah, I had the same experience. I got reduced hours, but I'm afraid it will not be enough. Do you have any advice? Well, I mean, you will have to decide it for yourself. I can't make this decision for you, right? So only you know what you want to do, how much you love work, how much you would rather have more money than less. And but if you feel drawn to focusing on your practice, then by all means focus on your practice. It's not like we also have this irrational fear that if we stop working, that everything is gonna, the whole world is gonna end if we stop working. No, actually, I worked since I was like 13 or 14 years old, even through school. I mean, I really loved what I did, and it wasn't like work, but I worked kind of officially pretty much like since 13, 14 to like, when did that have, like, 40? I don't, yeah, I think 40. Yeah, I always worked, and it was kind of scary for me to stop working, even though I actually have a lot of savings and I'm financially safe. So, but generally, you don't really need much to survive, and you can practice anywhere. So, right now, I am perfectly capable of working, and if I didn't have my current situation, is if I didn't have savings, if I also wasn't like trying to ramp up my practice helping other people, then I would probably just go back to work as a software engineer, or maybe I would do something else. I don't know, but I would just find a way to make money. It's part of the game. I'm not the guy who likes living in monasteries. I prefer kind of more active life. So, but. If you want to spend a few years in some very quiet place, isolated quiet place, by all means. I mean, be your own person. You see, follow your heart. Follow your heart over fear. Do what you want to do. No one can resolve these internal conflicts but you. So choose what you want to do over the fear of consequence. That would be my kind of general advice. But I'm not advising you to quit working, because it's not clear from your message what you really want to do. You might really want to maintain a sort of a stream of income. It's up to you. It's up to you. Live fearlessly. Be your own guide. Okay. Minus says, thank you so much, Artem. I really appreciate your work. You're most welcome. Thank you very much. Siski says, is dreaming and delusion bad? I mean, no, it's not bad. It becomes bad when it makes you do silly things that affect you and other people, and reject yourself, what you truly desire, or like for example, all the harm and evil in the world is also coming from dreaming, is coming from human psyche. I mean, is it bad? Well, I mean, it depends. It depends on your point of view. From the absolute point of view, nothing is good or bad. It's just what it is. From the practical point of view, I mean, would we live in a better world, in a less cruel world, if less people were asleep? Yeah, sure. Both are true. Why not choose your dream? Well, we are choosing our dream, actually. We just choose it unconsciously. So we would forget, right? Because otherwise we'd be dreaming. It would be kind of lucid dreaming. But if you're truly dreaming, then you forgot. And you forgot that you have constructed your character actually the way you chose, but you forgot that you chose it. And you forgot that it was you who constructed it. You forgot that you're just dreaming. So if you know that you're dreaming, and you know that you chose your dream, then you're at least dreaming somewhat lucidly. So yes. So we choose our dreaming for sure. And if dreaming is suffering, what is wrong with this? Oh, there's nothing wrong. I mean, there's nothing wrong with suffering, generally speaking. I mean, the thing that is wrong with suffering is that it spills over other people, and that usually suffering people make other people suffer too. Well, of course, like, the level to which psychological suffering is, we can speak about the levels, but we can speak about whether psychological suffering can be inflicted upon one individual by another, or if it's our internal working. But we cannot debate, for example, the atrocities and the cruelty that have historically happened and continues to happen, which aren't merely psychological, but very, very kind of real and actual. So again, I mean, it depends on perspective. What is wrong with this? I mean, what is wrong with the Holocaust? I mean, it happened, right? What is wrong with it, right? And from the absolute perspective, from the God perspective, like everything that happens isn't wrong. It's just, it happens. You can't argue with it. But from the human perspective, I mean, I don't think that we need to seriously engage the question of what was wrong with Holocaust or things like that, or what is wrong with abject poverty, or what is wrong with kind of this obscene inequality that we observe in the world. So all of those are actually quite direct consequences of dreaming mind, because they are quite direct consequence of our obsession with status and power, with our obsession with hierarchies, with our obsession with proving ourselves and other people that we're better, with our selfishness, with our obsession with form over substance, with our obsession with how things look and not how they are. So, I mean, you decide if it's wrong or not. It's very difficult to answer this question in kind of in this kind of moral landscape. So Alex says, yes, I don't have savings and don't want to live with parents. Yeah, then yeah. Well, I mean, I hope that you will figure it out, or life will figure it out for you. So the thing that I know is that it can be very challenging to combine practice with work. It is, and people at work can trigger you, and you might not want to work at all, and our society isn't really very knowledgeable or forgiving of people who are going through this process. Not even through this process. I mean, there are all sorts of mental hardships, depressions and mental illnesses and things like that. We only recently, in the Western society, only very recently, the dialogue has started about whether mental illnesses should be considered serious, kind of, and be more accepted and accommodated, be more accommodated for in the workplace, right? As physical illnesses are. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I feel for you, but believe it or not, I mean, you will figure it out, and you will also at one point you will look back at your current pickle and you would be like, that was so much fun. Trust me, this will also happen. So I mean, these challenges are a part of it, and they're beautiful in their own right. Saskaris says again, oh no, that was you, I'm sorry. He says, or she, I don't know, where is humanity heading? Are we as people more awake in general, or are we still dreaming? Good question. That's a difficult one. We're certainly still dreaming. I mean, the humanity is certainly fundamentally haven't changed. It's just that we restricted ourselves and we became more civil. So we have become more intolerant of physical violence. We become less and less violent with every passing decade, pretty much, and with every passing century. We have generally adopted a much more cooperative view. So, for example, we generally prefer now trade over war, but we still rely on the social mechanism to tame our violence and to kind of channel our greed into something productive. And one of the examples of this mechanism is capitalism. Or to channel our desire to be better, to be on top, into something productive, which would be the kind of the focus on competition, for example. in capitalism, right? So we still need a lot of those checks and balances to kind of not go crazy. And still, like with all of this, if you look at the modern society, then it's quite sick. So we don't have massive violent outbursts as much as we had before, but we still have tremendous amount of extreme misery and suffering going on. And we still, like, the addiction to drugs is very high. The prevalence of mental illnesses, very high. Pretty much like half the population can be diagnosed, pretty much. So it's very difficult to say if the fact that we became less violent is an indication that our egos on average became somewhat smaller, or it's just that we now channel all of this destructive energy inwards, and that is the consequence. I mean, that is the explanation of why there's an epidemic of depression and bipolar disorder and all sorts of mental hardships, and also the use of drugs, which is also a way, an attempt to get relief, to escape from suffering. So it's difficult to say. In general, I think that both are probably true. So I think that our egos are a little bit less kind of mad now. So I think that as humanity, we'll probably suffer less right now. So we for example, we hurt our children less than before. We don't hit our children nearly as much. I mean, it's already pretty much in a lot of countries in half the world, it's considered a crime and cultural taboo to beat your children. Even 50 years ago, it wasn't the case. So as a consequence, we grew up less kind of probably less abused and less hateful. So I think that both are true. But if you look at also, you don't need to look far to see examples of how the suffering finds other outlets. Like, for example, I think that before, the primary outlet for suffering before, it was family. So again, like beating children, beating partners, being very emotionally abusive, domineering, all sorts of conflict. I mean, family was sort of the ground zero for that historically. I mean, not like over the long course of history. I mean, I mostly mean 20th centuries, when we already kind of separated. We were already separated into different households, and this idea of nuclear family was already quite entrenched in society. So that was the kind of ground zero for. I mean, now the ground zero of intolerance and hatred is actually the internet. And I'm sure that there are people who behave quite timidly in families, but are completely unhinged on the internet. And I'm sure there are still. I mean, of course, I'm not trying to discount domestic violence. Is still a big issue. Children are still sexually abused and physically abused. Of course. It's just that it's sort of, in general, it's a downward trend. So I think that humanity has been good in channeling our aggressive energies into something maybe emotionally as fulfilling or difficult or ugly as it used to be, but less physically so. And internet is a good example of that. Video games is another good example of that, right? So there's everybody shoots everybody on video, and there's been a huge popularity in video games, but we have less violence in the real world. And when people study the correlation actually either non-existent or it goes backwards. So the more the proliferation of the video games, the less shootings and violence in the area, not more. So this idea that kind of if you play video games enough, then you will get this ideas that you need to do the same thing in real life. Just didn't find any world evidence, any real life evidence. So we are kind of good at, we're getting better at finding outlets to channel our suffering, and we're also getting better at being more demanding from our governments. So you can make a point that, you know, governments are still very oppressive. It's a kind of it's very strange. So you still pledge allegiance. I mean, what do you mean pledge allegiance? If I pledge allegiance to government, it means that I'm saying that those other people are like, I'm not loyal to them, I'm loyal to you. You see, why? Like, why should I? Why should I? Just because I was born? Like, why would I kind of dismiss a person just because he was born in France, for example? I mean, why? It's such a silly idea. It's barbaric for sure. But on the practical level, right? There's much less conflict, and even though governments and businesses still manipulate us with kind of all the passions, and especially capitalism with, you know, status, finances, money, exploitation, still rampant for sure. All of that is true. But if you look at the number of totalitarian regimes, it goes down. If you look at the amount of violence that is applied routinely to govern, it goes down historically. So we as society, as a society become more and more aware, we place more demands on our governments, and we also more aware of these social problems. And from this perspective, the internet, the emergence of the means of communication and the means of spreading information, the means of spreading awareness in the general mass public, not just some, but for everybody. You know, everybody has a phone now, right? So this is a wonderful, it's a beautiful development. So every development towards more transparency is always also a development towards more truthfulness, even though, of course, you know, those tools are also used and abused in sinister ways, in nefarious ways, so those are you know, like any tool, you can use it for good or to do damage. But on average, openness, truthfulness, honesty, communication, connection wins. But you could also, you know, you could make an argument that, okay, we're much more connected on the internet, but we're much less connected physically now. You know, we're all in our homes, and that's also true. So, but still, the access to information right now is insanely different than it used to be before. Even the concepts of spirituality, you know, even though if I say that, if let's say if there was some evidence, and if we could claim with some level of certainty that there's just as few enlightened people right now as there were 1,000 years ago, you cannot with a straight face say that access to them is as difficult as before. It's much more easier to find them. It's much more easier to read them. It's much more easier to find anybody. It's much more easier to read anything. So that's good. That's good development. So that's kind of what I have to say about it. And it's speculation. I mean, I haven't lived in historical times. I haven't spoken to people. I mean, in order to really make a distinction, I would have to have been a spiritual teacher like previously, and have watched enough people go through the transformation and now, and then I would compare how difficult the transformation is, because the stronger the ego, the more difficult the transformation. The more you cry, the more you kind of struggle with anger, the more you have been abused, the harder it is to forgive yourself, to forgive other people. I mean, the more you abused and the more you have been abused, the harder it is to forgive yourself and to forgive other people. But I would generally suspect that there was a slight reduction but it's kind of slight because we're still very sick. Okay. Okay, so it's been already an hour and a half, and we'll wrap up pretty soon. I will just go through those 3 remaining questions. Mela says, do you think there will be a place of acceptance in society for people who are so deluded that all they want is destruction and killing in the future? What do you mean by acceptance, right? If by acceptance you mean, oh yeah, please kill everybody, we don't care, then maybe not. Maybe that's a good thing, because if you are, you have even if we speak about freedom, you may say that you're free to kill anybody, but then okay, the society is free to then catch you and jail you, or even kill you back. You see, so freedom is a double-edged sword. So, but if you talk about the place of acceptance as the place of psychological acceptance, the place where they could undergo the transformation, the place where they could kind of learn to be happy, to learn to let go of their deluded ways, to deal with their trauma, to find the joyful life, which is what authentic spirituality offers also, then I hope so. I mean, every good spiritual teacher is accepting of such people, because every good spiritual teacher had a period where he was exactly like that, right? I wanted a lot of destruction and killing. I mean, my pain was significant. I mean, every ego is in pain, and every ego wants destruction and mayhem. So, and you just sort of witness it, and so right now the problem with society is that there is no safe place to even talk about it, right? So you suppress it, and whatever we suppress, we get more of, and sometimes in a very kind of distorted, perverted ways. So it's really bad that there are very few kind of really open, accepting communities or teachers or people that also won't try to kind of give you lots of pills. So, but do I think it will change in the future? It's the same question of, do I think that enlightenment, spirituality, truth will continue to penetrate society and kind of increase awareness? It's very connected to the previous question. I'm optimistic. It just depends on how long it will take, and I think we're moving extremely slowly, but we are. I think we are just very, very slowly. Alex says, what would you say is the difference between a mental illness like depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, and awakening, if any at all? I don't think there's much, actually. So I think that I mean, I wouldn't say between awakening, but basically, so ego is mental illness. Ego is mentally ill, basically, and it's just a matter of how intensely it manifests, right? So what we call mental illness is kind of pretty, from my perspective, is pretty standard, common egoic manifestations, but they are more intense, kind of, they are more extreme than what is considered normal. So we call it mental illness. And so in authentic awakening, you get exposed to your ego. So you get to see the kind of the stuff that is going on in your head. So sometimes it could be that you consider yourself perfectly normal, and now, oh my God, I'm kind of a pretty sick individual. There's so much stuff in me. I'm really scared. So, but it doesn't mean that you kind of have created it, right? You kind of blew the lid off it, right? So it was always there, and you just get exposed to it because through self-awareness, through paying more attention to yourself. So Is a mental illness just resistance to experience and we call it mental illness? No, well, I mean, I wouldn't just say that mental illness is resistance to experience, but I would say that mental illness is resistance to experience that took a certain extreme form. It's the same as saying that mental illness is an egoic manifestation that took an extreme form, and it's not even that extreme actually. It's kind of mental illness. If we define mental illness as mental as something out of the ordinary, then actually we would have to redefine probably things like depression, because depression is like, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, I don't know what the percentage of the population, I don't remember the statistics, but it's huge, right? So mental illness is quite ordinary. So if we define mental illness as mental unease, then it's not even that uncommon. So kind of so yeah, I mean, if we define ego as resistance to experience, then kind of, yeah, but I don't want to discount the struggle that people who are diagnosed with mental illness go through, right? So I was diagnosed with mental illness. I mean, what's important to remember is that if you were diagnosed with mental illness, there's nothing wrong with you. I mean, most likely you're not even much worse than most people, actually. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about the labels. Focus on your experience. Focus on learning to just be. Focus on practice. So don't worry about the label. So you're mentally ill, I'm not mentally ill. That really doesn't mean anything, to be honest with you. Every ego is mentally ill. Or a belief that we have something that makes something wrong with us. I'm not sure about the other part. Okay, Dex says, yeah, I'm trying to wrap up. Dex says, when I have an unconscious moment or miss, as Osho said, I now feel it almost immediately in a physically uncomfortable way. I get that, yeah. There's this fear of missing the mark. When does this go away? Well, it goes away when you no longer want it to go away. It's the kind of, it's a very strange, paradoxical answer, but it's been my experience with pretty much everything. So anger goes away when you no longer want it to go away. Fear goes away when you no longer want it to go away. Seeking goes away when you no longer want it to go away. So everything pretty much works like this. It's very difficult to predict, because if I tell you it's going to go away in a year, then you will expect it to go away in a year. It will surely stay then. You see, so I understand that once you have tasted being conscious, it's very difficult to have unconscious moments. But unfortunately, they are not without its function. So you kind of have to because the moment is unconscious mainly because you dislike it. You see, because then consciousness is the movement of yours to be somewhere else or to feel something else. In the past, in the future, in your fantasy, somewhere, but away from what you're feeling right now. So in order to learn to stay with what you're feeling right now, you kind of have to go through. So you say, for example, I now feel it almost immediately in a physically uncomfortable way. That's exactly the practice. So now let's feel it. Now let's feel this physically uncomfortable way, because that's the that's this uncomfortable way that you want to run away with, that you want to that you don't want to experience, that you don't want to feel. Right? So kind of turn towards it, turn towards this discomfort, explore it. You see? So every unconscious moment is kind of an opportunity. So there's this fear of missing the mark. Well, explore that fear. Stay with that fear. Like the paradox is that we miss the mark. So we search for what's already there. You see, and every time that we're unconscious or we feel uncomfortable, we yearn for the consciousness that we experience. We yearn for some state of non-duality. We yearn for some relief and whatever. We're running away from whatever it is we're experiencing right now. And the relief is in accepting it, going through it, and emerging on the other side, allowing it to consume you and allowing it to let go of you. And so, and the more you do that, the more you learn to be okay with discomfort, the more conscious you become. So it's a kind of a tricky game to play, but it's the only way. It is the true path through the discomfort. Always what's happening in the now. Always what's happening right now at this moment. And the discomfort is a part of it, right? Discomfort also happens right now. So, okay, good. So it's been 1 hour 40 minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for coming. It kind of I have 2 private chats. Oh, okay, that was addressed. So thank you very much for coming. It kind of started slow, but there were at some point there were like 21 people, which I appreciate. Thank you everybody for joining this conversation. Is helping me make this videos. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your existence. Best of luck to you on the spiritual path. Hang in there. It's going to be all right. It always is. So please feel free to visit my Discord forum, send me other questions, and best of luck in your practice. Thank you again for coming. That's it. That's it for today. Thank you. Bye. Bye, guys. Bye.